what really lies ahead for the South China Sea? This is a question that has been asked repeatedly, long before the USS Larsen naval destroyer provoked Beijing on Tuesday. As one who has been researching the South China Sea for 3 decades, Dr. Mark Valencia is a visiting senior scholar at the National Institute for South China Sea Studies, was keen to express his independent views on CCTV at a recent Xiangshan Defense Forum in Beijing. Our conversation began with the various scenarios facing the region.
Well, there's several scenarios, if you will. One scenario, let's talk about the best one first of all, is that, as I say, they choreograph this, or maybe they reach a side agreement, secret, that China will stop construction on these features, the U.S. will not undertake freedom of navigation exercises. That doesn't solve either the fundamental issues or even the incidents that have led up to this, which have more to do with U.S. military activities in China's offshore, where it is flying Poseidon 8s, these are submarine hunters, intelligence planes, EP-3s, and so on. And who knows what under the water, maybe submarines that sense and can interfere with communications, or at least intercept them. These incidents, unfortunately, are likely to continue until the two sides can agree on some guidelines for operations. In other words, frankly, what is a friendly and what is an unfriendly? And
that's scenario one.
There. That's scenario one. The worst scenario is that the U.S. has a show of force, that it doesn't use a Coast Guard vessel, that it uses some of the 7th Fleet, the Aegis destroyers, for example, sails them, that China confronts, and that we have an incident, a violent incident. Will it lead to war? No, I don't think so, not at this stage, but it certainly will send relations into a tailspin. And worse, from my perspective, is that the countries in Southeast Asia will now really be caught in the middle. And both the United States and China will be lobbying for their hearts and minds, that they want them on their side. They have to get off the fence. And that's going to push and pull. It's going to have domestic political effects in a number of these countries. It's not a good scenario.
But China has been described by many others as so-called assertive. Of course, some Chinese scholars have already pointed out that China is only being, quote-unquote, reactively assertive, meaning reactive to others' rhetorics and actions, and apparently looks as if assertive. What is your observation?
The question of assertiveness, well, as I say, let's face it, the United States has bases in the region. China does not. The U.S. has operated militarily in the region for a very long time and is now increasing its military presence. Who's being assertive? If China is responding, then it is true that China is being assertive in a responsive way. It depends on whose ox is being gored. I mean, what side you're looking at.
We are seeing some real changes going on in the world. We all know there's a incumbent power, there's a rising power, United States, China. Of course, history suggested different kinds of solutions. From your observation, which direction are we going at the moment, as a scholar, when you look at this? And what really political leaders on both sides are trying to do at this moment?
The U.S. has no history of sharing power. It's just not on. And in fact, we've pulled money out of the UN from time to time when we thought that it was not being used in our direct interest, even though that was supposed to be the idea, that you put it in a pot and that the world as a whole, decides how it's spent. China has been downtrodden for centuries. It is now standing up for the first time in a long time. And it certainly doesn't want to go backwards, and it doesn't want to be second fiddle to any other country, including the U.S. How do you get around this? I think the only way, I agree with Hugh White from Australia and some others, is that there has to be some power sharing. And if the U.S. is not willing to share, then China is going to have to take it. Not militarily, but by influence over time.
What do you think about the immediate future of South China Sea?
Yeah.
Some say this is an ultimate reflection, the South China Sea conflict, of an incumbent power with a rising power when it's focusing on one issue. Others say this is just one of those very pragmatic issues that need to be worked out. Once they worked out, it will not have much influence on the general relations, even though U.S. is not the direct player in the South China Sea because it is not a country in the region. But what do you think is the nature of this overall discussion about the South China Sea? Which has to come first, solutions about the South China Sea, or the mutual trust and the solution of peaceful coexistence, using your word, between China and the United States facing the new realities?
Yeah. I think and hope the latter.
Hope the latter.
However, I think they may come to a head and like a pimple almost burst and be relieved, the pressure be relieved by some agreement to disagree in a more fundamental way.
The MOUs signed by the two militaries, is that the things you were trying to suggest?
It's a start. It's a start, but they're, as I say, deal with superficial issues. What do you say when you meet another warplane or a vessel from another country? That's a start, but it doesn't address the fundamental issue, the definition of freedom of navigation, for example, the right of intelligence gathering, and there are legal and political questions surrounding it. I will say, and I should get this in, that China could help the situation tremendously, and itself, by converting its claims or clarifying its claims in the South China Sea to be consonant with the treaty on the law of the sea that they signed, meaning that they say, all right, we claim these features we say are islands. These islands have 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zones. They have continental shelf. Now we know that other countries claim these islands. We know that they claim this and that. Let's negotiate it out, ad infinitum perhaps, but at least then it's an understandable claim that is to the West and to the other claimants, and it brings it back within the realm of compromise.
And from the U.S. side, you say?
I mean, I think the U.S. is going to have to compromise.
Compromise about what?
Well, about power, about influence, about some of the values it holds so dear. I mean, they're fine for the U.S. They're not necessarily fine for Asia.
Professor Valencia, it's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, sir.
Well,
Thank you very much.